Sure. Erica Bowman, Director of Resource Planning, Resource and Environmental Planning and Strategy. One of the most effective elements of making certain that electric vehicles are adopted in California are vehicle incentives to help with the cost of the actual vehicle itself. So there's three different kinds that we see in our specific territory. One is the federal incentive, where it helps people purchase, it's basically an after-tax rebate. Then you have the California incentive, which is a state program, and it too is an after-tax rebate. And then you also have what we call the Clean Fuel Rewards Program in Southern California Edison's territory, where people can apply after they purchase their vehicle for a rebate. So that's really helpful to get the adoption of electric vehicles across California and across the United States. As it relates to China, they've actually done a lot with quotas, where they've set quotas that they wanted to meet a certain amount of electric vehicles in their market. So it's a little different approach, but certainly has been effective. But the other piece I would say with respect to California and also the rest of the nation is that you need away-from-home infrastructure to support cars so that when you're traveling and doing your daily lives, that you're able to charge when you need to. So in terms of EV adoption in other states, it really is looking at the programs that are available. So the federal tax incentive, as we just discussed, is really important because it helps with the vehicle costs themselves. So as California has demonstrated, we have a state program that helps with that. If states start to adopt similar programs where they're able to contribute towards the cost of the vehicle itself, they'll be able to buy down more of that cost and help consumers purchase those vehicles. Other pieces is encouraging away-from-home infrastructure. So charging stations at workplaces and destination centers like malls and schools. It really helps people feel confident that they're able to get where they're going and be able to charge when they need to, so that they're basically don't have any constraints relative to an internal combustion car. So there's a couple of things with respect to range anxiety that I think there are already technologies that are helping. So batteries are getting bigger. So I think with the larger batteries, people are feeling more confident that they're able to go to the places that they want to go, and that electric vehicles aren't just a commuter car. The other piece is really making certain that you have that large network of away-from-home electric charging infrastructure, so that you can do it in different ways, right? There's a piece where people are commuting during the day, and so they're commuting to work, so it makes sense that you have chargers at workplaces. People are going to destinations, whether it's the mall or a movie theater, and making certain that there's also charging options available there. There's also the area where you're on a longer journey, so let's say you want to go from Southern California to Northern California. So you would want to have a DC fast charging network available to those types of vehicle or drivers so that they're able to get where they're going in a much shorter amount of time. I think as it relates to DC fast charging, certainly the times have come down. You're able to get charges in 20, 30 minutes relative to a few hours, depending on the need that you have. And I think technology continues to push that, where you're getting higher energy in a shorter amount of time, which creates basically a more consistent or similar feel of electric vehicles charging times relative to an internal combustion engine. The technology still needs to improve there, and certainly as an electric utility, we need to figure out ways to make sure we're managing the energy throughput so that it's affordable for customers. I think it really depends on where the person lives. Certainly today, the majority of EV adopters live in single-family homes, and so they charge the majority of their time at home. I think that's going to persist. But not everyone lives in a single-family home. You have a lot of folks that live in apartment buildings and multi-unit complexes, and so we need to figure out ways in which they have access to charging too. One way that could happen is that the actual site who owns, or the site host who owns the building, installs electric vehicle chargers for their tenants. Another is offering DC fast charging in not just along corridors, but in urban areas, so folks feel confident that they are able to fuel their vehicle when they need to. But I think the majority of charging will certainly occur at home. It's just in those special conditions where maybe folks don't have access to charging at home that they would then have to find other means away from home for charging. Yeah, so it's really interesting in terms of when we look at electric vehicle charging, one of the things that we see is it's adding load to the system. And that in some ways means it's a really great opportunity because it encourages higher utilization of the system that we have in place today, which leads to lower rates for all consumers across all different categories of electric consumption. The piece of that too is another opportunity we see is that we look at charging and being able to help manage and shift charging during times of day. We can do that in different ways. We can offer incentives to drivers to charge at certain periods of time of day, whether that's through time of use rates or just calling specific events and saying, okay, these time periods may offer free or reduced charging or charging rates. And that's really to help take advantage of the fact that we have a lot of solar generation, certainly in Southern California, where we see the opportunity to push more vehicles into that time period when the sun is shining for them to absorb that excess generation so that we're utilizing those generation assets more and getting more renewables onto the system. And so it's not only making the cars greener, but it's also making our system greener. Yeah, so there's a lot of interesting things going on. Outside the charging stations, there's also networks. So there's networks within the charging station operators themselves. But we need to be able to manage charging and send signals to the cars and to drivers saying if there's a program in place or there's an opportunity for a charger or for a driver to charge it during a time of day where rates are a bit lower and there's an incentive there that they're able to do that. That's something that we need to be able to communicate to them. So networks are really important. Yeah, so it's an interesting question with respect to renewables and charging. One of the things, and I mentioned this earlier, is that we see a real opportunity to use vehicles as a way to charge on the grid during times when there's high solar generation to really help with curtailments that sometimes happen on our system. The other piece too is just not so much focused on California, but more kind of the Midwest and where there's a lot of wind resource, is to charge vehicles at night so they can actually add load at a time when there's a lot of wind blowing, which really I think helps as well in terms of utilizing that renewable resource in a cost-effective way, as well as bringing down emissions because you're using that carbon-free electricity. The other piece too I think is really an interesting area is, so one of the challenges we have with respect to DC fast charging is the amount of power that you need in a short amount of time. We see batteries as well as solar, certainly in the Southern California area, as a unique solution to that, where we can couple solar and batteries at a DC fast charging site to potentially help manage that load. So you're not pulling so much from the system that it's causing higher costs, but you're able to manage it with other renewable battery storage technologies. It certainly needs more research. So I don't know that we're willing to say it's going to be the standard in the future. Right now, I think the challenges with wireless and inductive charging is the fact that you're not getting the power in a short amount of time. It's still kind of the same issue that we're still trying to resolve more efficiently currently with just standard charging. So until I think you get that power flow in a shorter duration, you're probably not going to see that be the standard. But it's certainly a technology that we're keeping our eye on because as it evolves, that might move into kind of the mainstream. So there's a lot of things that are kind of coming together as it relates to autonomous vehicles. One of the things is when people look at the kind of trends of how autonomous vehicles are going to emerge over time, they really see it as that intersection of all the different systems required to make certain that the car is safe and able to drive autonomously, coupled with electrification. And a big reason for that is because of the actual cost of the vehicle that we're expecting in the future for electric vehicles, that it's going to come down so much that it just makes that whole system so much more simpler, because an electric vehicle is a simpler system than relative to an internal combustion engine, and it really creates a lot of synergies there. Now, I think as we get more electric vehicles on the road, that's the way in which we're going to drive cost out of the vehicle. That actually gets us to that point of being able to couple the autonomy with the electric. That really leads to, I think, where people see that really unique revolution that we may have self-driving vehicles and maybe not have personally owned vehicles, or there's going to be a lot more options to folks in terms of mobility.